These are 3 things that I do continuously to improve in Substance Designer. There aren't that many tutorials compared to like Blender or something like that. Sometimes I just get really lost and I want information and I can't seem to find it. How is it possible that there are no tutorials about certain things? I have just these few things that I do that help me out in those moments. I'm kind of scared that some of this is going to be obvious and not helpful, but I don't know. Since I sometimes forget to do this, you never know. Maybe it'll help someone. So I'm just going to go for it. So my first tip is actually just to look into the Substance documentation every now and then. So they have explanations for all of the nodes. You have a whole list that you can go through and you can see what the parameters do, and you have some example images. I have to say, sometimes I'm a little bit disappointed at the information. It just feels so abstract if you're not super technical minded, and I'm not that technical. I really need to see things to understand what things do, so I wish they had more examples of these things in action, but it's still helpful. Even if you're not looking for what a specific node does, I would still recommend actually going to the node library and just kind of scrolling through and looking at stuff, because every now and then a name will just jump at you and you're like, wait, this exists? I have a bad tendency in Designer to not look at the node library and only use the search function. So basically, if I haven't used a node for a while and I forgot about it, then it's gone. Going through the node library every now and then is really helpful to me. Anyway, shit ton of nodes. Generally speaking, you could just say looking at the documentation for Designer in general is a good idea, like understanding inheritance, and there's a bunch of stuff here. I mean, I'm really terrible at some things, like there's this one part that makes me feel really, really bad in best practices, like performance optimization guidelines and graph creation etiquette. There's days where I actually do some of these things, and other times I just don't give a shit. I'm just going through and I just try to make things, and but then I see videos where they're telling you to make like a color node 16 by 16 instead of leaving it at the actual size that your graph is, and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't, and my graphs are so slow. But I mean, as long as I know it, I don't care. My graphs don't have to be performant because I only make completely useless graphs that are never going to be used. It's just because I like making things and they look cool. So whatever, but it's cool. The other part that I found a few weeks ago is not in the Substance Designer documentation, but in the sampler documentation. And that's this page. I'll link the pages down below. It's Adobe Standard Material Properties, and they kind of go through all of the properties that you can even have for a material and kind of what it looks like depending on what value you choose for things. And I find that super helpful because I just feel like there's so many outputs you could choose for Substance Designer and not a lot of information on how to use those outputs and what effect things have. And that pisses me off, quite frankly, because I get really lost. I'm just like, well, I want subsurface scattering. How does it work? And then I have all these output things that somehow say scattering, and I have no idea what to do with them. So going here and seeing how things can affect your output, I find really helpful. I didn't study any of this, so I have all these knowledge gaps, and this type of stuff really helps me kind of fill those knowledge gaps a little bit, especially because I don't have anybody to ask. So the theme of this first tip is obviously go to the source. The people who actually work on Substance 3D software are probably going to be the ones with the most knowledge and the most in-depth knowledge and the most technically correct knowledge. Going to the source to find information seems to me to be the most, to make the most sense. So the last part would be specifically go to Adobe Substance 3D, their YouTube channel, for tutorials, because I don't know, staying up to date, like every time there's an update, watching that video so you don't get left behind, I just find super helpful. Tip number 2, I can't believe I keep forgetting to do this. So I get super frustrated when I can't find information to something, a new aspect of Designer or material creation that I haven't really gone into yet, subsurface scattering or sheen, and I just feel like I just can't find specific tutorials for stuff. And in the last weeks, I realized again that my best option is to look at graphs from other people who did something with those outputs and with those characteristics that I'm trying to emulate. Tip number 2 would be to go to Substance 3D Assets and look for a material that is as close to what you want to make as possible and get the SBS file and look at it. For example, I was trying to do subsurface scattering, so I went to organic, and funnily enough, in December I was doing gingerbread men, and was trying to make the icing look right, and boom, look at that. Somebody made a gingerbread flake cookie with subsurface. So I downloaded this graph, well, a few days ago, a little bit too late, but I could look at how people use it. Same thing for sheen or for anisotropy, I don't know. This. Sometimes I'll change things and things look different, but I can't really tell in what way they look different. They just look different. I can't figure out if it's the right type of different. And then looking at somebody's graph and seeing how did they actually use specific outputs and stuff is just worth a lot more than sitting there and trying it out for hours and not understanding what the consequences of my actions are in a positive way. So my third tip, which is also my favorite tip, it's kind of dumb as well, and it feels a little bit illegal. I'm just going to show you this the way that I use it. So basically, I have a PureF. I've had this PureF board for multiple years, and what I do is I just kind of screenshot things that I find along the way that I could use at some point in the future. And that can be like tutorial related to a specific topic, or it could just be just random stuff that I see and I think, someday I'll need this. So this is what my current thing looks like. Basically, when I was doing splines, I went through the tutorials on the Substance 3D YouTube channel and screenshotted anything that I found relevant. So I have the whole start, assemble, transform, render workflow, and some examples of how things were used, and even how I have used them at some point so that I don't forget, because something that I do a lot is just forget about how I did things. 90% of the time I'm just trying random crap out, and at some point I get to something that I like. Very rarely I know exactly how I'm going to get from A to B. So it's kind of cool for me to have documentation of specific workflows that work really well. Yeah, so here's, for example, my splines area. Here's my paths. Here I was looking at subsurface scattering, also that was the gingerbread thingy. And like I said, they had some information in there, which I thought was cool because there's very little information to how the outputs work. So a lot of things have terrible quality because they're out of other videos. Like all of this, a lot of these things come from the actual Substance tutorials. Then I have my entire Johnny Nodes fangirl area. I started watching his videos like sometime in the last 2 years or something. I don't know how I hadn't found him before, and just everything feels like gold. So I have this entire area just with stuff that I found in his videos. Yeah, because I mean, if you're watching like an hour and a half video, his videos are very long. And if you're watching all of that, there's a bunch of information in there that'll be helpful. And there is no way, for other people maybe, but there is no way I'm going to remember even 10% of it. So I need something like this. And then I like to have visuals that I can see, where I can see really easily what I'm looking for so that I can zoom in really quickly. Another thing that I put in here are happy accidents. So I do something cool happens. It doesn't help me for the graph that I'm currently making, but I don't want to forget it. This here, yeah, just playing around, found this, thought, okay, that could be cool for something, maybe. So those are my 3 little bit random tips. And I hope something might have been of use to you. If not, then well, I'm sorry. I don't know. They're very helpful to me. So what you gonna do? Anyway, goodbye.